What's up, friends? Welcome back to Rooted Wisconsin. Appreciate you for clicking another episode. Appreciate you for being you. Today's is with Ryan Ebert, artist based out of Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, down on the southern side. Really talented artist in a lot of different realms. What caught my eye originally was his fish decoys. He's a dark house spearer, and that got him into creating these awesome fish decoys that you have to check out. He creates apparel. He has all different kinds of stuff around his art. And he transitioned into that position of entrepreneurship from, he used to work as an art director for a print publication in the agriculture industry. Fun conversation about his career path, about his art. I found out he was on a podcast with the guys from Meat Eater, which was really cool. I respect what they do a lot, so it was cool to hear that. And talk about CWD in Wisconsin. Ryan is a hunter and avid outdoorsman, as am I, so that commands a lot of our conversation, and we go a lot of different directions, so excited to share it with you today. Check out his art. I'm just getting back from a family vacation up in the UP where I got a day to sneak out and chase some brookies. If you check out the Instagram pictures, the sun hoodie I'm wearing that with the crappie stringer is Ryan's art. He's created some cool apparel around it. And just all around a really cool guy and fun conversation. So excited to share it with you. As always, shout out to our sponsors at Riverside Pizzeria of Green Bay. Appreciate you, Ryan. I just had a number 6 with cheese out yesterday. Extra pepperoncinis, was delicious as always. So if you dig what we do, make sure you support them too. Excited to share it with you. Here it is, Ryan Ebert.
As the years have passed, so have the ways. We've tried to lift our neighbors. Where did the love go? Where did the talk end? We need some help to make this better again.
How did these start, man? Like, how did a fish decoy start?
Pretty much in college, I got connected. One of my good friends I made in college, he lived from Marinette, Wisconsin, kind of up on the Michigan border there. And he just told me about, like, hey, me and my dad in the winter do this thing called dark house spearing and for pike. And I didn't have any idea of what that was because, pike spearing isn't really a thing here in Wisconsin for the most part. We have sturgeon spearing, but even that was a little bit foreign to me where I was at, about 2 hours from Lake Winnebago. So I hadn't really done that either. So then one winter, it must have been like 07 or 08, went up to the UP, and it was a real hard winter. So there's a lot of snow. We couldn't get out to like one of the lakes that they wanted to try. So we just went on this little marina just over the border there and went spearing, and we didn't even see a pike that day. But it was just so cool, like seeing these decoys that my buddy's dad, who was a warden for Wisconsin at the time, that he was carving these decoys. And we saw like trout and stuff. And we had this otter that kept coming up under the ice. And it was just so neat. And I was really fascinated by it. But it was a couple years before I started making my own decoys, just because at that time I was in an apartment and like, well, I'm not going to be making a carving mess in my, little apartment. So when I finally got a house, I just started carving in the corner of my garage and had gotten one of the decoys from my buddy's dad and just was like looking at it and trying to figure out, how this thing is made and like looking at photos online, because there wasn't any sort of tutorials at the time of like, here's how you make a fish decoy. So it was just a lot of trial and error and figuring it out. And I was just obsessed with it. And, I've always been like a creative, artistic type person, so just naturally really gravitated towards the functional art that is a decoy, and just thought that was so cool.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get into all of the art in a little bit. We'll take back the clock, but a couple questions about these. So, like, is this? I've never been spearing. I've never been spearing any kind of fish, sturgeon or other. Is this what's actually down there? Because I've seen the videos. Like, you see the video of the decoy down there. Is it actually wood like this? And that's the...
Yep. Yeah. I mean, there are a few guys that are doing like resin. There's a few guys that are starting to try like 3D printing, but traditionally they're all wood. Usually they're all cedar, just because that holds up the best to the temp changes and like, going in and out of freezing water, because certain types of woods like basswood is really easy to carve. But if you put that in the water, and if any water seeps into that thing's going to implode and crack. So cedar, just holds up the best. And so you're carving it out of cedar and then weighting it to swim, and usually using like copper or aluminum for the fins. So yeah, if you were to put these in the water, they'd do a big like slow circle. For pike, that swim and like things like that matter a little bit more. For sturgeon, guys are just basically hanging those down there. They're not swimming them a whole lot. And sturgeon decoys are generally more creative and colorful and larger, because sturgeon are just big, curious dinosaurs, whereas a pike is an aggressive predator, and they're actually coming in to like hammer the decoy and try and eat it. So
Yeah. Well, and I'm assuming they'll do that, right? Like
they'll hammer at it and bite at it. And yeah, I got some decoys that are like 10 years old now that are just beat the hell, and it's a badge of honor. People are like, oh, you don't want a pike to like smash this beautiful decoy. It's like, no, that means it works. It's awesome. It's like a stamp of approval on the decoy.
Absolutely. Yeah. So where are the weights? And you said they swim? I have so many questions. So they'll like that actually swims in the water without you having to do anything.
Yeah, so you'll put it on a jig line, like on a jig pole. And then once you jig it, it'll go in a forward motion and do a big slow circle. Some guys, like them to swim a little bit faster. You can do funky things with the fins to make them kind of move differently. Or they have ones that are called like wiggle decoys that don't have the side fins, and they'll act like a dying fish and kind of do like a belly flop. Every fish is a little different, especially if, depending on what you're using for the fin material, can like throw off how you're weighting it. Usually that lead cavity is from like the back of the gills to like your center of balance, if that makes sense. Like if you put it on a pencil, and that kind of gives you an idea. And you're trying not to go too deep with it, because it'll get top tippy if you go too deep. So you're keeping it all kind of in that lower third of the belly. And then it's just a lot of trial and error. Like sometimes it's literally one drop here will make it go right, or you got to take a little bit out because it's getting tail heavy or something. And yeah, it's a lot of tinkering.
Super interesting. And it's hand carved, I'm assuming? Like these are hand carved?
Yeah, it's a mix of all different tools. A little bit power carving, knives, like the ones with all the scales like that. It's one at a time with a wood burner, putting the scales in, and yeah.
Oh, so that's okay. So that's a wood burner that did the scales.
Yep. Yeah, and then just one at a time going through there. And it's a couple different like size scale tips and things to get it right.
And I'm assuming, do people buy these that aren't spear fishermen? That buy them for art?
Yeah, I would say at least like half of what I make probably just goes on shelves and like houses and lake cabins. I actually have this map, like a U.S. map in my wood carving shop, and I put a pin every time I like ship a decoy to somewhere, and there's pins all over the U.S. and I mean states that for sure aren't getting ice. Like these are not being used for anything other than as a collectible, and there is a huge collector's market for these, and all mine I do sign and like number and put the year on it.
Yep.
And there's like sporting goods shows and like sporting auctions and things like that. There's a huge one in Illinois that just happened a few weeks ago, the Guyette and Dieter auction. In the last few years, they've broken like some records for fish decoys. Like I think last year was $160,000 for an Oscar Peterson decoy. He's like
$160,000.
Yes, he from Michigan in like the 1940s, I want to say, was when he was like carving. But yeah, so like stuff like that really. There is a big market, and not quite as big as like duck decoys, that everybody thinks of a decoy, but yeah, there is a market for fish decoys for sure.
I mean, maybe it's because I'm a fisherman and not a duck hunter so much, but I think the fish are way cooler.
Yeah.
Myself. I assumed as much because like immediately they grabbed my attention, and I was like, damn, I would order this just to like set on the shelf, you know? Super cool. So where does art start for you, man? I read your bio. I saw the stuff online. Where does art start for you? It seems like it goes a lot of different angles for you.
Yeah. I mean, really when I was a little kid, like just always was super into drawing and like doing drawings for my friends for like $1, things like that. And then when I got into like middle school, high school, I started messing around with a scroll saw and was making like yard art and garden markers and stuff, and was selling those for, again, a couple dollars, just all this time making things. But that's kind of where like the creative entrepreneurial spirit kind of started. And then didn't really quite know what I wanted to do like coming out of school, but knew that I want to do something with art. I come from a farming background, so like I briefly thought about doing something in agriculture, and just kind of stumbled into METC in Madison and graphic design. I'm like, well, that seems like something I can do and make money at, but I had no concept of graphic design or what that was at the time. From a super small town, Ohio, less than 1,000 people, like and old enough that we, really didn't have like computers or anything like that. In art class, like I was the kid helping helping the teacher with, kids with their art projects and things like that. So yeah, I went to school for graphic design and really learned a lot there, and kind of started learning more about photography, which I was interested to at the time. Shot like friends' senior pictures and stuff like that in high school, and then I did an internship for a catalog company and kind of learned more about like studio work and layout. And then at my portfolio show, an editor for a publishing company in Fort was there, and it's an ag publishing company. And I had listed that I had my American degree in FFA on my resume, which maybe seemed like a weird thing to my instructors at the time, but he saw that and it's like, oh, this guy's, we're looking for a designer. This guy's interested in agriculture. And so then I got an interview and was hired as their art director right out of college, and then kind of went from there.
That was your first gig?
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot there, man, because that's what you try to do. And when you're searching for a job, you try to set yourself apart. And you didn't know they were going to be there, or like you just had it on your resume?
No, I mean, they for the portfolio show that was at the Monona Terrace, they send it out to all the employers kind of in the area and stuff. And so I had no idea they were going to be there. And
the only farm boy graphic designer that was in the class.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, for sure. Yep.
That's all. So what kind of farm did you grow up on? What did you do?
Real small hog and poultry farm, and then my parents both worked for a cheese factory in Portage too. So
okay, man. So then that sounds like an interesting gig. And from what I remember, you were there for quite some time. How do you continually, like, there's not a lot of people that look at that through the lens of art, but you got to for a long time, right? That had to be super interesting.
Yeah, so I was there for 11 years as the art director, working mainly on Hoard's Dairyman magazine, which is a very historic publication that was founded by W.D. Hoard, who was like a governor of Wisconsin, kind of really brought the dairy industry to Wisconsin, and was instrumental in a lot of things we kind of take for granted now as far as that goes. And then also was the art director for Hay and Forage Grower magazine. And then at the time, they also owned 13 newspapers in southern Wisconsin, so helped a little bit with that. And then they had their own print division. And I also traveled throughout the U.S. visiting farms, taking photos and video work and stuff for the magazine, and kind of doing a little bit of everything as far as publishing went.
Yeah, super cool. And that's a neat opportunity for someone who, your degree's graphic design, photography was a passion, but then to immediately jump into a job where your photos are in magazines,
right?
Like, that's a big leap.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
It was a lot of learning on the go, and just developing my skills and kind of what I've always done. Yeah, I kind of dive headfirst into everything and just learn as much as I can about whatever that subject is in creative work. And it was definitely neat, and met a lot of really cool people and saw a lot of cool farms, and did, I think, pretty well with the magazine and won some nice accolades there. And like I said, 11 years of starting out. Yeah.
Ditto, man. I jump in just head first, passionate about everything, just end up way too busy all the time.
Right. Yeah.
But it's so worth it, man. Like when you find something that lights your fire and keeps going, it's so engaging, and it makes life worth living.
Yeah. Yeah. And being from that farm background, and I could kind of like relate to a lot of people, and, I wasn't from a dairy farm, but like I still understood, what these people were going through as far as farm work and life goes, and wasn't just some, like city kid or whatever that didn't understand that was coming there, and kind of knew how to be respectful of different things, and when I'm taking the pictures and doing all that. Yeah. Yeah.
So then that was probably a crash course too. One of my passions is like journalistic storytelling, and that was probably a crash course in that for you, right? Because how involved were you in the story, and then, or stories? And then what was it like collaborating with those type of creatives, probably for the first time too, right?
Yeah. I wasn't doing much of the writing side of it, but if I would go to, a lot of it was just building up like stock photos for the magazine, like if we needed something on a specific article. But then if I went to a farm that, hey, these people have a really, I was taking a lot of notes while I was out on the road, and like, hey, these people have a really cool story. We obviously have all these pictures for it now, and I kind of hand that off to the editor or a writer, a freelancer, and just kind of go from there and kind of work with them on like, hey, this is worth telling in the magazine.
Super cool, man. So How fun could that? What else is more fun? You get to drive around to different farms, take pictures that you think are cool, that you get a creative lens, and then somebody else tells the story of that. That's so cool. So it sounds like the timeline then. You said the dark house thing happened with a buddy in college. So the decoys happened about the same time? You were doing the decoys
right around
while
that
you were
same
working?
time. Yeah, so I was starting to learn decoys, and then, like I said, in high school and then through college, I was kind of doing pictures for friends and kind of doing a little bit of design work on the side. So then all through my time as the art director, I still had this little bit of side business that was kind of going and kind of growing. And just kind of, developing my skill set as far as everything I was doing at that time. And then, I don't know, it was probably 8 years in or so, I kind of realized, like, hey, this side thing is growing, and it's growing into something. And I was working, obviously more than full-time at the art director job, and then starting to be more than full-time on this side gig. And then I kind of realized, like, I need to just choose one or the other. So I think it's about year 9 or so, I realized, like, I'm going to go on my own full time. But I'm a very, like I said, I grew up on a farm, didn't have a lot growing up, very frugal person, and like kind of very conscious of those things. I'm like, I'm not going to just take this leap without like a safety net. So I started saving money, building that client base. Like, I need, if this fails, I don't want to be in trouble, as far as, like, I had bought a home with my wife and everything. It's like, I got to have that safety net. So then, to year 11, I'm like, all right, I got a good safety net. I got a good client base. I think I can make this work, as a thing. So then I made the leap in 2018 to being on my own full time.
It's a huge jump, a huge jump when there's a certain amount of, especially for, I think similarly in a lot of aspects, I'm cheap. I'm super cheap. Frugal's a cool word, but I'm super cheap too. Like, I don't, things are things, right? Like, they don't, like something like this, or your decoys have a ton of like innate value, but like just in the grand scheme of life, like a lot of people just buy things to have things. And I'm not one to do that so much either. So I could feel you there, but it's such a big leap to, like, that's almost, to go back to the word safety and security of, like, this weekly check or biweekly check comes in, you trade your time for it, you have your health insurance. Insurance is fiasco throughout the nation. So you have that, and then you say, okay, something else has my passion. Did you have your child yet at the time, or not? No,
she's only a year and a half, so she's relatively new to the whole equation there. Yeah.
Nice.
But I mean, it was as scary as, like, the best way to put it. You know, it was a very stable job, and that's a company that, is 140 years old. It, publishing and print has, had its own troubles, but as far as stability goes, that was very stable. And they by no means were like kicking me out the door or anything. That was 100% my choice. But I felt very stagnant as far as creative goes. It was, at that time, I was putting out 26 issues of magazines a year. It's just constantly that churn of grinding stuff out, and there wasn't a lot of time to be super creative within what I was doing. And, I toured a lot of farms and done all that, and, like I said, had some nice accolades as far as photo and design work and goes, all that. And I just felt like I needed something more to, like, keep pushing me and really expand my creative interests.
Yeah, and once that fire's lit, man, like, it doesn't get extinguished just because it's not getting new wood put on it. Like, it continually wants to go. Yeah. I kind of went through the same thing in a roundabout way. I used to work in broadcasting, and then I, like, got burned out from that singular type of creativity. So I got a different kind of job that I loved and I still love. But at the same time, there came a point where I was like, I want to create something again. And that's how the podcast was born. Like that same flame that you just had to stoke back up a little bit. So you got to have those passion projects. Like the decoys, I know, are what everybody finds that are interested in, but the amount of time it takes me to make one and then what I sell them for, it's like, the hourly is not great. So it's just like, that's my passion project. Like, I am selling them, but, like, if I had to rely on just that, I'd be in big trouble, like, they're not the money maker. But you got to have that thing that is passionate. And even if it's not, like,
driving income or anything.
Yeah. I assumed that had to be a case. So I want to talk about all the different angles of your business today, but I knew with the fish decoys, like I looked on Etsy and they're what like $200 to $500, something like that.
Those would be the higher end. Like a basic worker for me is like $100. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And and this is not 2 hours of work.
No, like that crappie with all the scales and the Tom Turkey spur that I found as the horn and all that. That's probably 12 to 14 hours of work at the minimum.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of steps in those process too. It's not like I can sit down in the morning and have a finished decoy by the evening. It's like 2 weeks because there's like drying periods in between parts of the process as far as paint and waiting and all that goes. So.
Yeah. Someday he'll get the $500,000.
Well, when I'm my daughter, when I'm long past, maybe
Yes.
and the guy at Dieter auction, that one will be $100,000 decoy or something.
Why do we do that? Why do we do that as people? We wait till people die to like give them accolades.
I think it's
Especially
just 'cause
artists.
There's no more being made, and I've kind of learned this. I do a show in Minnesota that's all about spearing decoys, and it's been going on for like 25 years, and I've been going the last 15 years now, I think. And there's been guys that have at that show that have passed, or they just quit carving for whatever reason, and you realize in that moment that you need to buy that from that carver. Like I make these connections with these guys and learn things from them. So I try to get one from each carver. Like I'm a collector definitely on decoys, and try to get one from a guy because it's like when they're gone, it's like no more is being made, and I can't talk to him and tell him how awesome this piece of artwork I'm getting from him. And it is weird that we just wait until like people are gone to place a value on their art. Yeah.
So you buy several from others too.
Oh yeah. Much to my wife's dismay, I have a very big fish decoy collection going. Yeah. So either buying or trading. I like to trade with guys too at that show. And
yeah. How big is very big? How many do you have?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, it's probably like 100 decoys or something.
That's
it's
still
not
a ton, dude.
I mean, there's like major collectors that I know have like semi-load, like legit semis full of fish decoys that they're just sitting on, and weird.
I get the mystique of it, man. I get the appeal because there's so many layers to it. Like, of course they're awesome looking, but like, I'm sure we'll get into some outdoors type talk today. Like if you're an outdoorsman, it's something that exhibits one of your passions in life in a really aesthetic way. They're functional. So like it's actually something you can say you use if you do that type of thing. And they're not like the problem at least I run into with a lot of like outdoor type decor of any kind is they're hard to make fit in unless it's like a lodge vibe. So like it's at the cabin or something. Yeah. I don't think your decoys are that. Like put it this way. I think my wife would let me put one of your decoys in my house somewhere, and that's saying a lot because I don't get to decorate.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of different things that make them appealing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they speak to a lot of people as far as if you have a passion for outdoors or you have a memory. Like a lot of people buy them. They'll tell me like, oh, this perch, I remember catching this jumbo perch with like my grandpa or something, and that's why they want it. Like it connects them to a certain memory or moment or whatever. And I think, they just speak to people in that way. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. So, like when you go through the process of making one, what's your muse? Like, do you look at something or do you just like start creating it from scratch?
It's a little bit of both. It depends if these are kind of more realistic, but I do a lot of real folk arty ones, and I'll just kind of like doodle out something that pops into my head, or I'll see something and think of it and then kind of start from there. But if it's a more realistic one, I'm just like Google image searching, like here's different crappies, and like every fish has like great variations as far as like color goes. So it's like, I'm going to try and do one that's more like spawning colors and it's real dark or vibrant, and so just a lot of reference as far as that goes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So speaking of the things that aren't real, when did the antlers on the fish start? So a quick backstory. One of the coolest ones that I think from yours, I like fishing for browns in streams. So like browns always catch my eye. And then you have I think it's on a plaque, right? Mm-hmm. With two of them, and one has the antlers, but you said that's one of your things.
Yeah. Real early on, I started making antlered decoys like with real like deer antlers. So those decoys are like 2 feet long, because in order to get them to swim, those antlers really throw stuff off as far as the swim goes. So you got to make them pretty big because there's already some weight there and mass. And I think I called it a buck sturgeon, and it was like sturgeon body, but it was like furry. I like etched in all these fur hairs and stuff like that, and then had these antlers on it, and just started from there. And then people really were into that, and I just thought it was fun. So then I've done a lot of pike and some musky ones, and then I've made decals now that are like my pikealope, and put those on shirts and stickers, and and it's just kind of what I'm, I guess, known for amongst the carving community. Yeah.
Is that a unique thing? Like, does anybody else do it? Have you?
Some guys have like dabbled in a little bit, but not quite to like the extent and style that I do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Super. And where did that idea come from?
Who knows? Yeah, I get weird ideas, and I like have this list going always of like weird stuff that pops into my head, or I'll see like on Instagram like a decoy or a fish, like there's these like Sturge Rassi type fish that are very vibrant color, like nowhere here in the U.S. And I think they're like in South Korea or whatever, and like stuff like that'll pop up on my Instagram, like, oh, that'd make a really cool fish decoy, and it's just kind of fun to like bring that then to here to the Midwest, and it's like swimming this tropical fish that would never be found here in the Midwest lake, getting a pike interested in it, or a sturgeon, and yeah, it's just fun to make those different things.
Yeah, and you can probably create a bit, right? Because you were speaking of the curiosity of sturgeon earlier, but like in general, I think a lot of fish will swim up and look at something.
Oh yeah,
and you don't. The nice thing about it is you don't have to get them to bite. You just have to get them to be there, so you can be a little bit more. Whatever you want to call it, creative, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
but you can take a little bit more risks and say it's not going to, if someone does use it for the functional purpose, it's not going to make it less possible that you get something or whatever.
Yeah.
Let's switch gears that direction a little bit, though. It looks like you do a lot of outdoor stuff. What are some of your outdoor passions and favorite things to do out of doors?
Mostly do deer hunting, obviously, and always have done that. And a little bit of fishing in the summer months, but I'm so busy with that's my peak season as far as all my creative work goes that I don't get fishing as much as I'd like, but do some salmon fishing on Lake Michigan with some buddies. And then, in the winter, I'm either sturgeon or pike spearing when I can. And those are the primary things. Used to do a lot more like squirrel and rabbit hunting, but where I'm at, the rabbit population's been pretty down for a while now because I think just predators and not a lot of cover for them. But we just logged our hunting property here this last year, so they got a lot of cover now, and I finally saw a rabbit for like the first time in 3 years. So I'm like, oh, maybe they'll make a comeback now. And
Coyotes?
Coyotes, and we got an owl that's kind of always around, and I think he does well. And I've seen some bobcats in the last few years during deer hunting, so I think there's a lot of stuff kind of keeping them knocked down. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Do you bow hunt too, or?
No. Again, like fall is like my peak as far as my portrait photography work goes and things like that. And still have a lot of agriculture clients, so obviously fall is a big time for most agriculture related things. And
so you do egg clients doing what?
Yeah, so I still, I made all these great connections when I was in publishing, and in for it is the National Dairy Shrine. So I do a lot of stuff for them with their museum, and then at World Dairy Expo, that's every October in Madison, and then just have a lot of clients that are still in the dairy industry on all sides of it, from manufacturing to processing, and just do a lot of like video, design, booth displays, really a little bit of everything.
All content still, yeah.
Yep.
Isn't that fascinating, man? Like you think about it, that doesn't immediately equate in your mind. You think of an industry, and you're like, well, how much content could they really need? But then when you actually think about it, it's actually quite a bit.
Yeah,
probably, and it constantly needs to be refreshed and.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and like I said, the Dairy Shrine's got a museum, and then there's all sorts of, the World Dairy Expo or a state fair. I shoot, a lot of dairy related things at that. And you kind of don't realize how many of those events are until like COVID hits, and then all those events go away for a year, and then I kind of realized like, oh, I do a lot of events for these people, and all those are all gone for a year and a half. And
yeah. So hold on. Speaking of that, what year did you decide to quit your job and go on your own?
2018. So then I had a real great, was feeling good about myself for about 2 years there. And then, COVID hit. And again, luckily I saved up that safety net, and because I definitely needed it in that time. I didn't realize all the events I did as far as either shooting, video, photo stuff for people, or like trade show type market things that I did, as far as selling my own things I make. And then I do like portrait work too, and so that kind of got thrown out of whack, and kind of rode the storm there for a good year and a half. And then in 2021 was when a buddy of mine mentioned about some screen printing business being for sale. And he's like, hey, me and this other guy want to do this, and you're the arts person. Would you be interested in doing this? So that's when I got started in screen printing. And then that was kind of its own like rocky thing, both, still supply chain issues of COVID. And then this other guy that was part of it, like, was supposed to be the knowledgeable guy on it and realized he wasn't. So that was its own rocky thing. But I learned a new skill there of screen printing. I knew the art side of it, but I hadn't really done screen printing on my own. So I kind of learned it for about a good year and a half, 2 years there, and then kind of brought that in under my own main business. And that was kind of where the whole screen printing aspect started. And that's been awesome as far as doing my own like outdoor fishing related type things and apparel, and people have really been into that. But then it's another thing I can offer to my clients. When I design a logo or a graphic for them, it's like, hey, I can now make the swag for, your event or your bar or whatever, your staff and things like that go.
Absolutely. Yeah. So for those that don't know, how do you define screen printing?
How so?
What is it?
Yeah, so I'm doing like actual screen printing, not like sublimation or vinyl transfer type stuff. So I'm actually designing the graphics and then burning a graphic onto a coated screen. It's coated in emulsion, so it's all light sensitive. So I burn that image onto the screen and then use what's called plastisol ink to then go through that, basically with the stencil I make, and then to imprint on the shirts.
Got it.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and that was, so you being the arts person coming in, you're saying you learned kind of that other side.
Yeah.
By
which I think is super important to know
Yeah.
all the front end of like how to properly make the artwork and set it up. And that's really a major part of kind of the apparel process goes, to know that front end thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I mean, that's grown. It's not only for clients, right? Like you make apparel that you sell like that. You had that super cool. And recently I sent you a message about it. It was like the badger with the cheese
cheesy
head on
badger.
it.
Yeah. So I'd made that like as a sticker first, and then people are like, oh, when is this going to be on shirts? I'm like, all right, well, I got to change. Because, everything's a little different. Like what you can do with a sticker as far as color isn't the same as what you can do as like screen printing. So you got to like deconstruct it and print it. So I have a 4-color press. I need to get that down to 4 colors to be able to actually screen print it. The apparel has been a big thing too. When I'm doing like my fishing related trade shows, things like that, people really are into what I'm making. Like I said, I did the pikelope on apparel, and I get a lot of requests for like the crappie one here is kind of a new one too, because I had a lot of crappie guys are like, hey, where's the crappie stuff at? And I think what I do is kind of more tasteful, like everyday, kind of like you can wear it anywhere, where it's a lot of fishing apparel kind of seems to be a little bit over the top in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like the NASCAR style, like everything's got to have a graphic all over it, and it's super weird colors, and it's just like, well, that's not something you're going to like wear out to dinner with your wife or whatever. And so I think there is a big market for what I do, and it's really keeps growing a lot. And I do like bigger, like the Wisconsin Fishing Expo and the Wisconsin Ice Fishing Expo, those are big events. And especially for a real small business like me to do like these major trade shows, it's a huge investment of time and money, but there's been just an awesome reception to what I'm bringing to them.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's certainly space in that. A few episodes ago, we had my buddy Rex from Door County, and he's similar lines. Like his brand's called Door Born, and it's like a lot of outdoor apparel for a long time was like, if it was like a way larger than life largemouth bass, like jumping out of water with a boat, and like such a busy thing. It's like, I don't know, the styles change and evolve since then too, but I get what you mean. There's a space for that. Similarly to, I don't know, this conversation or why we do the podcast. I talk about it all the time, but it's like, sure, that's awesome to joke about brats and cheese and stuff about Wisconsin or like whatever, but there's like legit cool stuff too. And I mean, you probably actually, let's talk about that a little bit, because you probably get that same vibe through the lens of arts in our state. Like sometimes it seems like arts are a little bit covert in Wisconsin. Do you feel that way?
Like how so?
I don't know, like for anything. So one of my, like yourself, I have a lot of creatives on the show. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. And like, I don't think we get the credit, or I shouldn't say we, I don't think artists in Wisconsin get the credit they do because sometimes it's just because they're from Wisconsin. It's like, no, people make cool stuff here too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think arts in general sometimes, some people, it's hard for them to put a value or see the value on it until they're like, you know, if they're starting a business and they get down the road, it's like, oh, I don't have a proper logo or a website or like a real professional polished look. And it's like, why are people struggling to relate to my brand and things like that? Yeah, they're hard to put a value on it. And I don't get as much anymore. I think younger artists get it more so, like the whole like trade for exposure type thing. And it's like, well, that's tough, man. Like it's not going to pay my bills. And especially like me, I'm 20 years into this. Like I luckily have a very good client base that I have almost no turnover on. You know, I'm plenty busy. I don't need to do like a trade for exposure type thing. But so I think sometimes people, again, putting a value on that, you know, all that learning that somebody's had to do to learn whatever craft or artwork they're doing, it's difficult sometimes.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I don't know. It's I hope it continues to grow. I've been watching actually another previous guest. There's like a lot of talk in Wisconsin about film credits. Have you heard about any of that? So like there's a lot of like tax incentives and fiscal incentives in other states. Mm-hmm. And one of our previous guests, Nathan, is like doing the road show here through like the legislators, whatever, like all the people that make the decisions about that stuff, and saying how like that can boost areas economically. And I've seen Wisconsin make a lot of progress in that area for quite some time with like cool art festivals and just things in local communities that shine a light on it. And maybe it was something that when I was younger, it just wasn't what my eye was looking for. Maybe it existed and I never saw it. But I think it's awesome to see now. It seems like it's a growing space, I guess I would say, in the Midwest.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think the arts in general in some ways are getting improving, like the makers market type stuff that you see kind of everywhere now, like wasn't really a thing to the extent it is now like 10 years ago. So it's nice that all these different creatives are having venues to get their stuff out there. Absolutely.
Yeah. People probably used to try to make bad trades for your fish decoys, right? Like, oh, that's super cool. Here's here's an old St. Croix rod that's 10 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So towards the end of COVID, added the screen printing. How does that work? How does that work integrating so let me rephrase. As an entrepreneur, how do you decide where to put your intention and what you think you're going to get return on investment from? Like in that scenario, how do you say, okay, this is a part I want to integrate into my business? Because you were just saying you've got, a nice baseline, things are good. How do you decide when something should be added?
I mean, for me, it's about like being just that full service. Like I said, I was designing like the logos and graphics on the front end, and then I was having to refer them to like a screen shop or whatever to like actually get their things made. So it's like, well, I can now make these things for them. And my first few fishing designs, I had a buddy that had a screen printing shop at the time, so I was sending him that stuff, and it's like, well, it'd be nice to bring this in-house and be able to do it myself. And that adds its own level of trouble there. There's only so many hours in a day, and it's like, well, now I'm doing all these different things. So there's just managing that workload now of like, all right, I need to dedicate today to screen printing because tomorrow I got a photo shoot or whatever. So within the business, it's just seeing like, I'm outsourcing this thing, so now I can learn this and bring it in-house, and it just makes sense that way.
Got it. Yeah. Pretty common growth strategy. That's good. So then with the apparel, are you trying to, like, going back to branding, you were talking about branding earlier, are you trying to make a brand, or is it like when you create a cool design, you're like, oh, okay, this makes sense to put on a shirt because people will buy it?
Yeah, it makes sense. Or like I said, I'll do these fishing expos and I'll get crappie guys or trout guys like, hey, you need more crappie stuff or whatever. And it's like, all right, I get kind of make a mental note like, all right, I got enough requests for this one, type of thing. Like I'm going to do something related to that now and just kind of keep expanding upon it. And as far as like the brand goes, I'm making everything. Like there is no middleman. So it's just all Ryan Ebert stuff. So I don't have like you said, your other guys, is Doorborn or whatever. Like for me, it's all just Ryan Ebert. Like it's fish decoy, it's Ryan Ebert fish decoy, it's Ryan Ebert apparel, all that. And I don't get super heavy as far as like my name or branding goes on my apparel. Like I just have my little logo like real small on the back, and it's never on like the front, big and loud. Like I said, some graphic fishing apparel, like the logos are all over the place. But for me, it's more like just cool art.
Yeah.
That's just what I want to promote.
Absolutely, yeah. Like the fishing jerseys, those get super loud sometimes. The fishing jerseys, that's something. Somehow, I always get sucked down that rabbit hole on social media, like of someone like a professional fisherman wearing their fishing jersey in like a bass tournament or something, just like outlandish, so loud, and it's just like I always get sucked in. It's a super entertaining, but it's just like you said, it's a different vibe. It's not like everyday wear. Yeah, but still.
I get why they got to do that. A lot of it's like sponsors and stuff. Absolutely. But for me, that's just not my style. And like I said, I want to be able to wear this anywhere and not feel out of place or whatever. And just, again, cool art is my focus.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, so now that you're, what it would be, soon it'll be 10 years. Time flies. Soon it'll be 10 years as an entrepreneur. When you reflect back on the decision, what are your thoughts on choosing to go on your own and do it?
Yeah, I tell my wife, like, I couldn't imagine doing anything else or like working for somebody else. I've had inquiries about different things, and it's just like, nah, I got to keep doing my own thing and set my own path and doing my own creative work. And I just couldn't imagine doing anything else. It's not easy. It's a lot of hours and a lot of nights and weekends and things like that, especially that's more difficult to manage those hours, with a kid and all that. And, financially, like, it would have made more sense to stay in the private sector. And again, having that steady paycheck, because you don't always know where a paycheck's going to come from. Or like you got money floating out there and you just got to buy equipment or inventory, or apparel, things like that. So there's a lot of stress there, but it's my life. I mean, it's what I do, and I couldn't imagine doing anything else. Yeah.
And I think that's how a lot of people end up. I had a really fun conversation with a friend the other day about, I think a lot of people, like everybody has that idea. That you talk and then you get in conversation and they're like, I thought about doing this at one time. So many people have that idea. And a large percentage of those things never come to life. So our conversation was kind of revolved around like deciding to take the step you did. And even being, a financially conservative person, you planned and still did it. Of course, there's the other side of the spectrum, which I think is the minority of people who will do it a little bit more on a whim and then fail, and then that's what makes it scary, Yeah. But those barriers, those things that hold people back from passions, I think it's fascinating to talk about because there's really valid arguments on both sides, and two, those thoughts that are saying like, well, what if something bad happens? Like, what if this? That's all super real stuff. Like, bad things can happen. We didn't know there was going to be a worldwide pandemic, and luckily you made it through it, but a lot of businesses didn't. And I just think that's a fascinating conversation about like how to diagnose those barriers and then circumvent them to chase your passions, because there's a lot of folks that have the idea that don't.
Yeah, I think everybody's got their own process as far as like a business goes. And for me, growing up, again, without much and being very frugal and very conscious of not spending money, like, so I've had very slow growth, as far as the business goes, like adding something here and there. And there's certainly different methods, and people dive headfirst in and spend a lot of money on, growth and things like that. And maybe they get big, but sometimes you fall flat on your face. And for me, falling on my face wasn't an option, with a family and a home and things like that. So I just, slow and steady growth has been my route.
Yeah, absolutely. What about like the farm? thinking, does that type of work still speak to you at all? Like, do you ever want to have some animals around the house or anything when you think back?
It'd be nice to get out to the country at some point. Both me and my wife, grew up out in the country, obviously, and we're in kind of downtown Fort, which Fort isn't that big of a town, so it's nice. We're only like one house removed from woods, so we get all sorts of critters coming through our lawn, and that's really nice. So yeah, getting out to the country at some point would be nice, and I think having my kid have a few animals or whatever, I think that's always a good experience to learn, like, to care for something and see it grow and kind of learn that aspect and not be super disconnected from, like, hey, here's where your food comes from. I think that's really important. And yeah, I still get on a ton of farms as for different clients, so it's good to have those connections.
That's something we talk about on the podcast a lot, the proximity to food, something I'm uber passionate about. And food that comes from animals, vegetables, all kinds of food is just like, it's not, you just go to the grocery store and it's there, there's a whole process behind that. Man, that's, we could go down that rabbit hole, but it's been on the podcast a lot. It was fun last year. Like, I had a good year deer hunting, and for the first time showing my kid, like, this is what happens. We still talk about it. And like, that stuff is super valuable and lost in some places, I think.
Yeah. My wife jokes that was our wedding dowry. Was her family has like 140 acres, mostly like pine trees and stuff farms. So it's been very good hunting land since we've been married and all that. So yeah, it's been fun deer hunting out there, and yeah, just seeing all the different critters. Like I said, I've been seeing more bobcats and things walk by, and it's kind of neat to just sit out there and experience all that.
What part of the state is that in?
Columbia County. So just like an hour north of Fort.
Yeah. Nice. CWD.
Yeah, luckily we haven't had, I get all my deer tested and I haven't had anything pop up yet, but I've seen a couple on trail cams the last couple years that make me a little nervous that something's going on, but haven't had anything yet. Yeah.
It's amazing. Like, of course it's not just going to go away, but like, I feel like I remember, and it's probably close to when I started deer hunting, maybe a little bit afterwards, like when CWD became a thing. And it's just weird to me that the conversation is still virtually the same as was then. You feel the same?
Yeah. Like, we're just spinning our tires on as far as any sort of progress or research goes there. And I think from my farming background, and I think I take it a little more seriously than some people, because I've seen, different viruses and things that can make the jump from an animal to a person, and, farms get quarantined because something happens. It's like, well, it hasn't made the jump yet, sure, but like, it's very realistic that something could happen, and I want to be conscious of that. Especially now having a kid, it's like, well, even if it's unlikely that she's going to eat something and it'll happen, I still want to get it tested and know, like, this meat is safe for her. Yeah, absolutely,
yeah. Especially being neurological, it's like, I don't know. There's a lot of layers to that onion, and okay, but I got squirred by that.
Yeah,
too.
We could get on a weird tangent there. Yeah, and go forever.
Yeah. So Columbia County, trying to think. I don't know that I've spent a ton of time like out of door places there. You said it's a heavy pine. Your land is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Good. Like, what's the like good quality deer? Good quality bucks, or?
Yeah, I've gotten some very, very nice ones over the years, and we're kind of. It's an older property, so there's on one side was an old gravel pit, and then there's railroad tracks. There's the pipeline that comes through, and then a power line. So like all these, it's kind of unsightly in the moment, but it makes these natural funnels for the animals. Like, they have to come through the property a certain way.
Nice.
And so I've kind of learned those deer patterns well, and it's allowed me to get some pretty nice animals. And
it looks like it on Instagram. Yeah. Access points too. That makes, I think a lot of times. I like bow hunting a lot, and access is really important because you want to try to, like, if I know there's a good deer there within like 300 yards, like, access is a little fishy. You got to get to it the right way. You have to, not be too loud. Wind's got to be right. And a lot of times that stuff on property makes it a little bit easier to do.
And I'm a very my wife would agree with this, like very stubborn person too. So I'll sit there like until I, freezing whatever the conditions are, and like sit there until like something walks across and I get it. And so yeah, some of my nicest deer I'm sitting there just freezing to death, and it's like the day after Thanksgiving or something, and all of a sudden, oh, there's that nice buck I've been finally waiting for. My first sturgeon, like that was a super long season. It was like day 14 of the season, and I'd been going up, driving like the 2-hour drive every morning to go up and go sit at least for that day. And day 14, I finally got one that had come through, and I'd kind of given up hope. I was going to go up to Marinette and go do this veterans outing, take some guys out pike spearing, and then had one finally come through, and that was when I got my first sturgeon. So I think it helps to be stubborn when it comes to the outdoors, and you'll finally gotta have something come through eventually.
Yeah, stubbornly patient.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit, just because it's something that I don't do. I like sturgeon spearing. Is northern spearing, is that illegal in Wisconsin?
Lake Superior waters, you can go for pike, but really, like if you're into it, you're going to go to Minnesota or Michigan. Pretty much every ice belt state other than Wisconsin has like a statewide season for it. And I'm part of a group that we've been trying to get it here in Wisconsin for a number of years. We got really close like 2 years ago. We did the whole DNR process of submitting a citizen resolution, and then that went through all the like warm water committee and things like that, and got it on the April spring DNR hearings. And then it was like an even split of yes, no, and then for some reason they have a no opinion option. So it was like 33%, 33%, and 33%.
There's a no opinion?
Yes. So it was an even split there. And then I have some connections and guys that I know that are in support of pike spearing, dark owl spearing in the Conservation Congress, which is like each county has an elected official for that. So then we overwhelmingly passed in that, and then at that point it was supposed to go to our Natural Resources Board, which is like the final step of the process of like getting a new season or law as far as the outdoor goes, and then it never got submitted to them. So then I talked to the DNR and finally got the response from them was they're worried about user conflict, which is muskies. Muskie guys are super not in support of it for the most part because they're worried about that a muskie might accidentally get taken, which if you look at other states that have pike and muskie and pike spearing, like it's just not a problem, or there's ways around it. Yeah, they look different in the water, they act differently in the water, and there's ways around it too. Like there's plenty of lakes that don't have muskies in it and just little hammer handle pike. Like there's ways to circumvent that, but so that continues to be our opposition to it here in Wisconsin. And usually when I'm going up to Upper Michigan, or I go over to Minnesota with some other decoy carvers and go spearing over there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we got to dig into this a little bit because there's a lot of stuff I want to ask you about here. This one, which of those decision maker groups had a like a no decision? They could just choose not to choose. That's it's like a state board, a state authority, or is it within the DNR?
So when the public does their spring hearing voting, it was yes, no, or no opinion are your options on all the questions.
Oh, the public.
Yeah, so the public can vote no opinion.
That I understand a little more.
Yeah,
I thought this
it is
was
still
like,
weird that it's like no, there is an option for a no opinion, and in my opinion, a no opinion means you're fine with it. Like you don't really care like if there's a season, so I kind of weight that more in the yes category, but I'm a little bit biased there. But
yeah, maybe because I can see that. I can see somebody so far removed from it that like you don't care one way or the other, but you could see how that could get a little squirrely if like because so much of life is about lobbying and storytelling that like then it turns into can you convince the people who don't care? So I kind of get that.
Yeah.
I thought it was like a board of decision makers of like state DNR or something that got a no opinion.
Absentee or whatever.
Yeah. Pay me and then tell me that I can be right, wrong, or just not even care.
Yeah.
But the muskie thing is interesting. So I'm assuming it sounds, and I think you said this in there, overwhelmingly the average sportsman of Wisconsin is okay with it or even advocates for it.
Yeah, like I said, it was like a even split across where the public voting went, and then we went to the Conservation Congress. We overwhelmingly were voted yes there.
Okay.
And I get what their concerns are, but also that sort of thing frustrates me so much in the outdoors. Like our own infighting amongst outdoorsmen. Like,
I know.
I'm so into this, one species that I feel like any other thing might, deter from that. And really, it's not. Like, we're all in this together. We're all conservationists. We all care about, the things we're after. And, at the end of the day, we're all following those harvest regulations for whatever we're after. And, like, we're not going to break the laws regardless of method it takes. So it's very frustrating to have those conversations sometimes. And it's like we have enough outside groups that don't want certain aspects of hunting or trapping or fishing. We don't need to fight amongst ourselves and keep another user group down just because we're worried about, whatever species we're after.
I completely agree, man. Completely agree. 100%. Oftentimes the arguments are from a lot of times they hold no weight. Mm-hmm. And another angle is that a lot of times they come from this place of like personal protection. Like, this is my resource and that could hurt. It was like the muskie argument. I mean, the person's thinking like, oh, this fish is more important than another fish or your type of, fun or outdoors recreation. So this should take precedence. I completely agree. That happens in the outdoor industry so much. One thing I'll say is that from what I know of the Conservation Congress, I think they do a good job of representing the sportsman holistically,
right,
from what I've seen and heard, given that's not that expansive, so I'm not an expert. But unsurprisingly, I think they do, they do a good job of, which they should, it's kind of their gig, but to represent the voice of the sportsman in general.
Yeah.
So it sounds like that's. Have you seen any of this stuff about the public lands being sold in Utah and stuff? Yeah,
so I'm part of BHA, and I did the BHA rendezvous in Minneapolis last year with all my decoys and stuff like that. So I'm very connected to a lot of those guys, and see what's going on. And
what a nightmare, dude! Yeah. What a nightmare! Unbelievable that it's even
being considered.
And like, I don't know, and I love that I'm seeing like humongous names in the outdoor industry jump on, because it's easy for them to turn a blind eye. But big names are like just making very candid social media posts about how terrible this would be to happen. Yeah. And it would just set such a nightmare precedent. Man. And I don't know where that stands today. I didn't say, do you know?
Yeah, I'm not sure where it's at right now. I know they're still, I think fighting over it. And as far as big name goes, I've seen like all the meat eater guy. Like, I got connected to them actually through my decoys, and they've been nice to like share some of our pike spearing efforts here and talk about some of my work, and did like their fishing podcast. But I've seen like Ryan Callahan talking about that. And as far as Montana goes, I know they've sold a bunch of acres in the name of like low income housing or whatever. But then he's like, well, really, they sold, I might be getting these numbers wrong, but it was like 18,000 acres, and they've only developed, I think it was like 40 acres, and it's all second homes for people. It's not going actually towards like low income housing. So they try to justify it with some of these things, and it's like, no, that ends up not being what it's actually used for. And now that public land is just, it's gone forever, and you can't get it back once it's gone.
That's the thing, man. That's the thing. Once it's gone, it's gone. And I think I'm not nearly as well versed about like what public lands are like globally, but I think we're kind of a unicorn in a sense that we have more than most other places.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And I think it stems back to like Teddy Roosevelt days and stuff. You hear that, but like that's why I don't get the whole like why it's even considered. It's like, okay, sure, once this is or sure, like there's money here, and you can get in the valid argument of like housing it is an issue, but there's a million other ways to address that issue other than go to the furthest extreme, build a house that looks at Mount Rushmore. Like there's way better ways that can happen. So what a nightmare. I can't remember how we got on that topic right now, but that's something that's been on my mind a lot lately. I've been seeing a lot of those videos. I did see the Callahan thing. Did you say you were on their podcast?
The Bent podcast was their fishing podcast for a number of years. I did that with Joe Cermelli and Hayden Samick.
Okay, cool.
And just talking about decoys. And then, some of them got found my work like pretty much probably like you did through Instagram or whatever, and have some of my decoys, and they've been in like weirdly in a couple of their videos and stuff they've done. And yeah.
I thought, they have a ton of cool little offshoots. The one I thought was cool, I think they called it Back 40. They did that 40 acres in Michigan where they turned
developing the deer hunting property. Yeah.
Talk about resonating with like your everyday hunter. Like that's what you can do. You buy 40 acres, you try to, turn it into whatever you can. But he faced the same challenges that most of us do, like neighbors are shooting deer, that you wouldn't shoot or whatever, and making noise, whatever, blah, blah, blah. You only have 40 acres. I thought that was a really cool series.
Yeah.
But they've done I can only aspire to do some of the positive change that they've done in any industry, but they're specifically in the outdoor industry. Like, it's awesome that they're to the point where Callahan does make an Instagram video that hopefully sways some opinions and says, don't sell this land. Cause like, I know, well, look at Wisconsin. That's an ever going conversation between stakeholders on both sides of like access for trout streams.
Sure.
And stuff like that, where, our DNR has done a great job of getting a lot of easement access to places. And then you'll be in the stream and like a landowner will just be a complete mean person to you about it. And it's like, okay, well, what's your thing that then you don't want to be infringed on? You know what I mean? Because the more those go away, the more we lose them.
Yeah. I think it stems back to that infighting and trying to take ownership of species or land and things like that. And it doesn't make sense to fight amongst ourselves in those scenarios. And
100%. Yeah. Tell me more about the spearing thing, though. I want to learn about it. So, like, you do sturgeon and pike.
Yep.
I mean, Winnebago sturgeon spearing is storied. But like, what's your draw to it? What brought you into it, other than having your friends do it?
Yeah. I love winter time, and it kind of bums me out we don't have the winters we used to. But
right.
I'm one of those people that really doesn't like summer. I hate bugs, hate being hot. So I love winter, and I love like that quiet solitude of winter, and everything's very peaceful and just being outdoors. And then, for me, spearing, it's the functional art of it. Not only the decoys, but then the spears themselves are all handmade. They're not being like mass produced by some big company. It's some dude, welding and, blacksmithing these things. So I think those aspects are really cool. And it's neat to have something that I made that brings in this fish and seeing all that. And so going up to Michigan in the winter months and hanging with my friends on the ice, and had some really cool experiences. And we'll go on a little tangent. Probably my favorite spearing story as far as pike goes, outside of my own personal best getting a 40-incher. I used to go do winter camping on this one kind of remote lake in the UP. So the year I left my job, 2018, we were going to go that winter. We had like good ice. It was like mid-December. I went up on a Thursday evening, stayed with my one buddy in Marinette, had a few too many beers, so I was dragging a little bit in the morning, but I hit the ice. I was by myself, like right before dawn. They were going to meet me after they got done work, and we were going to camp this lake. It's like 400 acres. It's got two little islands on it. You got to drive like a mile and a half back on this logging road. So it's pretty remote, and there's like 4 little cabins on it, but they're clearly just summer cabins. I've never seen somebody out there in the winter. So I go back, and it's very early ice, and this lake has a lot of natural springs. So I always try to go this one way out, and that way wasn't snow covered at all. Like we'd gotten a dusting of snow like 2 nights before, and I'm like, I think that's really new ice, and I didn't feel good going that way. So I went to the right and, spudded my whole way out, get out to where I wanted to go next to this one island, probably about a mile out, walk out, and I'm out there. I'm like trying to get set up, figuring out where I'm going to go, and I look across the lake, and I see this dark black object walking, and I'm like, what the heck is that? And at first I thought it was a wolf because it was like taking these weird like long strides, and I thought I saw a tail, and it was just far enough away. And then I realized, I'm like, oh, it's a black bear out on the ice. And I'm like, what the heck is this thing doing out there? And as a photographer, I always got some sort of camera on me, so I had a very nice point and shoot, and I like set it up, and I'm taking some pictures and little video, and I call my one buddy that I'd stayed with, and he works at a winery up in Peshtigo, and I'm like, hey, there's a black bear on the ice, and he didn't actually answer, so I just left this voicemail, which he saved because he thinks it's so funny because of the tone of my voice. I'm like, just, you can tell I'm really like amped and like don't know what's going on. And after I realized this thing's walking towards me, and I'm like, what is going on? So I start yelling at it, and I'm cleaning my spear and auger and stuff, just trying to make a bunch of noise, and it keeps walking at me. Like I said, it's early ice, so I'm like, I don't know which way is safe to get off. The way he's walking is the exact way I took out, and behind me is just marshland. I'm like, I'm sure that's not like locked up in any way for me to get out of here. And so I'm just like, got to stand my ground and keep yelling at him. He gets within about 10 yards of me, and he finally like stops, and he's looking at me, and I'm just like ready to fight this bear. And he just stops, and he finally goes up onto the island that I'm going to camp. And I'm like, all right, I'm not camping and I'm not staying here. So I just throw all my stuff back on my sled and make record time getting out of there. And to backtrack just a tiny bit, my one warden buddy, I called him too, thinking like, hey, maybe he's got some good advice for me to like get this bear to stop beyond just yelling at it. And he just tells me the same things I'm already doing. And then he ends with, hey, if you die, can I get all your decoys? And I can hear my other buddy in the background just laughing his head off. I'm like, you're not at all helpful here. So yeah, I finally get out of there, book it out, keep looking over my shoulder, and I can see this bear just wandering on the island. So I was staying through the weekend, and we went to some other lakes the next day, and then we came back 2 days later, and with my warden buddy, well, he's retired at the time now, and we walk out, and this thing is just sleeping basically where I had left it, out on the ice, like on the edge of this island. So we took some pictures with it and stuff, and we let the Michigan DNR know, like, hey, there's this bear that's acting kind of weird. And his theory was it was probably like a 2.5-year-old bear, like maybe its first winter out on its own, and it was kind of like a little bit warmer weekend. So he's like, it probably just woke up from hibernating and was just really confused and groggy and wandering around. And yeah, I was just like, well, I don't care how young or whatever is going on. Like, I did not want to wrestle with it. So that actually inspired my very first shirt design I did. It was like me holding a spear like to this bear or whatever. And yeah, it was just a fun, unique story that you wouldn't get otherwise if you're just sitting in your house in the middle of the winter.
That's the reason to go outside.
Yeah.
Man. That's so classic.
Yeah.
Crazy though.
Yeah.
Cause so first ice, you're in the, was it like November, end of like?
It's mid December. So
Okay.
in Michigan, their season runs from December 1st to March 15th.
Okay. Got it.
For pike spearing. Yeah.
Yeah. Talk about weird, man. And it, like, what did it do? You said it got within 10 yards. Did it pay you any mind, or did it just walk by and?
It definitely like acknowledged me that I was there. And you know, I don't, like I said, I was going to go camping, so I had some food in a cooler, and I'm like, I don't know if it was maybe winning that or something. And yeah, I definitely yelled every curse word I could think of at it, and just thought for sure I was going to have to wrestle with this bear. And yeah.
At least at that time of year, if it was groggy, maybe you had a shot. Who knows?
Yeah. I was groggy too. Like I said, I had a few beverages the night before. And yeah, when we saw it 2 days later, I'm like, I definitely didn't, you know, even a young bear, like that thing still got some good claws.
Oh,
and
yeah.
as far as weight goes, I'm like, I'm sure it's pretty close to what I weigh. And
And you said it was 2 days later when you went back, and
Yeah.
it was still just sleeping there?
Yep. Yeah. Very much alive. So now I revamped. Yeah. I because we took pictures, like I said, and some video clips, and I, you know, did that first shirt design, and I'd put that picture of like us by this bear, and everybody's like, oh, this bear, why you got this picture of this dead bear? I'm like, it's alive. So I had to like write, this bear is alive. And I just revamped that design actually just a couple months ago. So everybody looks at it and they see, oh, it's alive. And then I, you know, tell them the story, and yeah.
What a classic story, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it's like most things, right? And that's what makes it so interesting, not to digress or go back to a previous topic, but that's the reason it makes it so interesting that there is so much bickering inside the outdoor community. Because, you know, that story with you going ice spearing is the same as somebody that goes trout fishing in the summer, or somebody that bow hunts a lot, or somebody that loves trolling for salmon in Lake Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's always to get those kind of stories.
Yeah,
you know,
we just want to be outdoors. And as far as like, if you want to actually put like fillets in your freezer, like dark house spearing is the least efficient method you can do. You know, the common saying for sturgeon spearing is you're duck hunting out a chimney. You know, you're on this massive lake,
Yeah.
and you cut this, you know, 3 by 4 foot hole. Well, that's where that fish needs to come through on this, Bago's like 160,000 acres or something.
Yeah.
So you're just praying that this fish is going to come through this little hole, that you're going to trick it with this decoy you've made or whatever you've got down. The same goes for pike. Like plenty of times, like I can see a pike kind of just floating outside the hole looking at my decoy, but there's nothing I can do about that fish because it's way outside my range. And I'll have guys that'll set up tip-ups around me, and they're just hammering away at the pike,
Yeah.
If I really wanted to put fillets in the freezer, I'd go with my buddies, 3 tip-up lines a guy and cover, a couple acres in tip-up lines versus this little 4-foot window I'm trying to get a fish out of. So, I can see a lot of fish, but, at the end of the season, I maybe am getting like 4, pike or whatever. We're not putting a hit on, any sort of population. There is no biological impact as far as that goes. And yeah, you got to have good ice, obviously, to get out there, but then you got to have clarity too. So a lot of lakes kind of get eliminated right there because it's like, well, if it's super iron stained water and I can't see the fish, it doesn't do me any good to sit there and stare at pea soup like you're doing on Bago. You don't have a choice because it's like, well, that is the season. It's a 16-day season, and whatever the conditions are, that's it. And we haven't been hitting the harvest cap, the last few years because it's been either bad ice or bad water clarity. Like this last season, we had okay ice, but it was just pea soup. We could see maybe like 3 feet and 18 feet of water. Well, they're a bottom feeder fish, and it's really unlikely you're going to get them to come up. It does happen, but, you're just sitting on a hope and a prayer. So that's why the success rate on Bago is usually like 4 to 5%. And then upriver, even the last few years, hasn't been that great, but upriver tends to be like 60% success rate just because it's shallower. You can usually see more, and they're kind of staging up there a little more densely populated. But
Sure. Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up because I think that's a good way to kind of circle in the rest of that conversation about, the pushback to it, because it seems like that would be my take on it. Like, one, each individual person isn't going to take many. And then I just don't see it being something that like the masses would take up overnight. Like It's kind of a unique thing to do.
Yeah. I get a lot of guys when I do, like, especially in Minnesota, I do a couple shows there, and I get guys that ask me about sturgeon spearing, and it's like, hire a guide, because if you don't know somebody directly that's going to take you out, it's a very hard thing to get into, and it's already hard to have success. So if you're just blindly going out there, at least hire a guide, that's doing some scouting, and that's going to up your chances, and they'll show you, like, here's how you cut the hole, here's how you push the cake, which is the ice block, down, and here's how you set up your shack and make it dark, pack snow and all that around it. And you got to learn it somewhere. And for me, I've luckily had people that showed me the ropes to get started, and now I try to pass it on and bring new people out. And you're not just going to dive into it. You can't go to Cabela's and buy all the gear like anything else. And
Yeah. Is pike spearing significantly different?
A little. There's a ton of crossover as far as the hole and the shack goes. The decoys are a little bit different. They tend to be a little more realistic. You tend to move them a bit more, like swim them more. Versus sturgeon, they're bigger, brighter, more colorful. Most sturgeon guys are kind of leaving them just hang there. I think part of that stems from a lot of the guys that around Bago aren't trying to make them swim, or they don't necessarily know how to make a decoy swim. So when a lot of guys get decoys from me and I tell them it swims, they kind of look at me funny, and then they go that first season, they're like, oh, I get it. Like, there's actually action to this decoy, and they'll move it some. And a lot of the times, I've only gotten one, but I've been with a couple buddies while they've gotten them, and, I'm swimming that decoy. I'll jig it once. It kind of seems like once it comes to a stop, then that's when that sturgeon comes in, and, they're not like a pike. They're not trying to eat it. They're just curious. So they'll come in and like kind of nudge it with their nose and look at it. And so I think that action does help a bit with sturgeon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's fascinating, man. Something I want to try someday. I want to try everything someday.
You're not too far from it here in Green Bay. So,
yeah. Well, it was great chatting with you, man. Thanks for filling us in on some of your passions and some of the things you do. I don't doubt that I'm going to be a fish decoy customer someday, because I don't know, they're just cool, like I said, and I think my wife will let me have one in the house.
Yeah, that's always important.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you having me on and talking a little bit about everything I do and interests and all that.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Thanks.